Cedar Fair just put out a few new surveys regarding future additions to some of their parks. Carowinds put out one for a new water ride, and Kings Island put out one regarding a new event. But by far the most interesting one was Canada's Wonderland putting out 3 options for a potential new roller coaster. All 3 options seem to be pretty unique in their own right and would make great additions to the park. Another thing to note is that they all seem to be pretty elaborately themed, so that would continue the trend that Cedar Fair has been on the last few years. Today I'll be breaking down all 3 concepts for this new roller coaster coming to Canada's Wonderland, the timeline for this potential addition, and what concept I like the most. I should note before we dive into this video that none of these concepts are confirmed and they all are just ideas the park is looking into for the future. However, Cedar Fair did do a similar survey with Carowinds a couple years ago regarding a new themed area of the park, and one of the concepts was an aviation village, which did come to reality in Aeronautica Landing. So the results of this survey could very well reflect on what the park's next coaster addition may be. Before I show off these concepts, make sure to do me a big favor by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel for more Canada's Wonderland and speculation content coming soon. With that said, let's jump right in. The first concept proposed is what the park is calling a blast coaster. Wonder where they get that from. The story for this ride goes as follows. A strange, unexplainable force has taken over the core of Wonder Mountain. Strap into your wing coaster car and prepare for an exhilarating high-speed launch that propels you through a cavernous subterranean tunnel and into the heart of the mountain. Suddenly, you are blasted straight up and out of the summit's highest peak. Experience awe-inspiring views as you soar high above Canada's Wonderland and encounter a thrilling series of heart-pounding twists and dizzying turns. This roller coaster is an obvious reference to the former Volcano the Blast coaster at Kings Dominion, which closed a few years ago. The concept art shows a B&M inverted roller coaster, while the description says the ride would be a wing coaster, likely from B&M. I could see it being an inverted coaster, mainly because it would make more sense in being able to clear the sides of the mountain, but I don't doubt that the park could make a wing coaster work. There's also no mention of inversions on this coaster, which is interesting because every B&M wing coaster that has been built so far does have inversions. So it would be interesting to see what they would do with the layout on this. Given that this coaster would be in the mountain, there would likely be a lot of restrictions on what they could do given that the structure is already there and that area of the park is relatively tight. This very likely means that one or more rides would have to be removed in order to fit this ride in. Wonder Mountain's Guardian, the park's Triotech Dark Ride coaster, is the ride that currently is located on that side of the mountain, so the construction of this ride would guarantee its removal. That would also go right along with the survey markers that have popped up around the mountain. The other ride that could be in danger of removal is Vortex, the park's aero suspended coaster. The top of the lift hill for Vortex uses a lot of the mountain structure as well, so it would be extremely challenging for the park to be able to keep this ride if they were to build a B&M wing coaster inside of the mountain. Vortex is also much more well-liked than Wonder Mountain's Guardian, so this would present the park with even more challenges. Although this concept would be challenging in many ways, this coaster would be something unique to the park and provide a spiritual successor to Volcano at Kings Dominion. It would also provide an amazing spectacle for those walking into the park looking onto Wonder Mountain, especially with the fire effect. The second concept is called Concert Coaster, and here's the story for this coaster. Live your greatest rockstar dream as you and your bandmates go backstage behind the velvet ropes, hop on a winged coaster car, and launch literally onto a concert light-filled stage for the ultimate, thrilling, pulse-pounding rock experience. A classic guitar riff sends you zooming over spectators' heads into a series of intense, high-speed inversions, all accompanied by your wing coaster's dynamic, onboard audio system, blasting multiple classic audio tracks played by some of Canada's greatest bands. To me, this coaster looks like an upgraded version of Rock and Roller Coaster. I also love the added touch of them adding music from Canadian bands, which is something that should help separate this park from its American counterparts further. My big question for this concept is where in the park would this go? If they're planning on building a whole stage area, this ride would probably need an entire section of the park to itself, which is no easy task considering that the park is nearly 100% developed. This means this ride would probably have to warrant some major rides getting removed. If I had my pick, they would probably remove Flight Deck and Time Warp, which are 2 bad coasters that take up a lot of land. This would allow the park to make this ride a nice cornerstone to a new area of the park. I also think that this seems to be the most thrilling option of the 3, and I think it'll ride a lot like Thunderbird at Holiday World. In contrast to the Blast Coaster concept, I think it would stay low to the ground, as with the launch there would be no need for a large lift hill. I also think if they choose this concept, it would allow other rides to be rethemed or new flat rides to be added around it for a new music themed area. As long as they don't have to remove anything good, this would be a great addition to the park. Speaking of new themed areas, the third concept is just that with Eureka Ridge Ghost Town. Adventure and excitement await visitors to the small Canadian frontier mining town of Eureka Ridge Ghost Town and its signature wooden family coaster. Board your train car for a thrilling, harrowing, off-the-rails experience full of exciting drops, hair-raising turns, and a dynamic, explosive ending in the tunnels of an old abandoned gold mine. This concept art shows a new themed area of the park with a wooden coaster in the back. The wooden coaster itself looks to be reminiscent of Zambezi Zinger, specifically with that spiral lift hill. It looks to have a medium-sized layout, but nothing too extreme. I think this would be a really cool extension of the Frontier Canada area of the park, which seems to be where this would go in the park, as I can't really think of where else they would make this work. The park is certainly in need of a good wooden coaster, as Will the Beast and Mighty Canadian Minebuster just don't do the job as rides adults can enjoy. The park already does have a bunch of solid family coasters though, so I don't really get why they wouldn't scale this ride up to the size of a ride like Mystic Timbers. But maybe the reception for Zambezi Zinger has been really good among families. I would also think that Titan Track would probably be used for the Spiral Lift Hill and other high-stress sections of the ride, just like it was on Zambezi Zinger, along with the Infinity Flyer trains. Now let's talk about the timeline of this next coaster edition for the park. I think 2024 is definitely ruled out at this point because any of these coasters would have to be well under construction in order for a 2024 opening. I don't think that 2025 is that likely as well because any of these additions would require a large amount of groundwork that would probably include multiple ride closures, especially for those first two concepts. So those will likely have to happen by the end of this season for 2025 to be in serious contention. I'm thinking that this addition will happen more along the lines of 2026 or 2027 as the park is still clearly in the planning phase of these additions. The survey that included Aeronautica Landing was put out in 2020, and the area wasn't built until 2023. Now it's possible that the big global event in 2020 pushed that timeline back, but I'm sure it wasn't planned for 2021. However, definitely be on the lookout for construction work happening at the park in the future. Alright, let's rank these three concepts up. My favorite concept of the three is the concert coaster. I really like the idea of the coaster bursting through a stage, and I think it looks to have the most intense layout. Plus, it probably also means the removal of some of the park's garbage coasters, so that's always a plus. My second favorite concept of the three is the blast coaster. I really love the idea of blasting through Wonder Mountain, and the spectacle that this ride would provide front and center after walking through the entrance would be nothing short of spectacular. My concern with this concept is that they'd probably have to remove Vortex, which is one of my favorite aero suspended coasters, and I also think that the layout of this coaster would be weaker than that of the concert coaster if it's a wing coaster. I also would rather see something like this at King's Dominion, but I guess beggars can't be choosers. My third favorite of the three concepts is Eureka Ghost Town. The wooden coaster is definitely the weakest of the three coasters, and I've heard mixed reviews on Zambezi Zinger, so that doesn't really help its case. I also think that the park has a lot of good family coasters and needs a thrilling launch coaster more than another family coaster. I do like the theming though, and I think this is something the park should pocket for the future. Those are my thoughts on Canada's Wonderland's new coaster concepts. Keep in mind that none of these are confirmed, and the park might not build any of these concepts, or they could alter one of these concepts and that could be their final product. However, I certainly want to hear what you guys think about these concepts down in the comments below, as I see good arguments for all three of these concepts. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more amusement park content coming very soon. With all that being said, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.